Thank you for joining me, Claudia Bachman, on this webinar. I appreciate your interest in this topic. Before I get started, I just have a few things I'd like to discuss. Throughout my presentation, I encourage you to interact with me by typing in questions and comments using the questions pane. I will be answering questions live after the presentation, so if any of you ask a question during the presentation, it will not be answered until the presentation is completed. Also, if you ask a question which is not answered at the end of the presentation, I will email you a response within 24 hours. I would also like to remind all of you that we are recording today's webinar and will make the link to the recording available 48 hours after the presentation. So if you miss something, you will have the opportunity to go back and listen or see the presentation. Again, I thank you for joining me, and I appreciate your interest in this topic. I've been in the substance abuse prevention field for over 20 years, working in schools and communities. My life has been affected by substance abuse, as many of you probably have too. You could attest to how devastating drug use can be on the individual participating in it and the family who's dragged along. It can be years of emotional pain, financial loss, physical and mental damage, legal consequences, and more. We want to protect our kids and families from this and ensure their dreams to become reality. From childhood on, our children are presented with a confusing picture of the world when it comes to drugs. Some drugs are good, some are bad. Some are legal, some are illegal. We're thinking about your cocaine, your crack. We're thinking about legal drugs such as alcohol, tobacco. Some drugs are medicines, prescriptions. Some are legal for me, but not for you. So are we having mixed messages with our children today? Are we trying to teach them the effects of tobacco and alcohol while we sit there with a cigarette in our hand and a drink in front of us? Young children view drugs in a different way than preteens or adolescents. It's as simple as good and bad with them. I want you to think about either one of your younger children and their age today, or possibly picture yourself when you were in junior high school. What were the pressures then? I remember a hit was what I got in a baseball game, or what one of my older brothers gave me when we were horsing around, not the ingesting of a drug. Huffing was what my father did if I come home past curfew. I remember passing a pen to a friend in school with a piece of paper in it with a note to sneak a note without getting caught. We would never imagine finding drugs in the pen. Today, kids have many different pressures than most of us did in the past. What are your dreams for your kids? What were your dreams at that age? How do the stressors compare? What age do you think the average age kids start using drugs today? What was the pressure that they have? If you guessed 13, you were right. Now, 13 is an average drug that at the age of 13. And drug use triples between 6th and 8th grade. However, the middle school years are also an age when kids still listen to their parents, and their parents play a central role in their lives. Now, how long do you think the average kid uses drugs before being discovered by a responsible adult? The answer is 2 years. That's pretty scary, isn't it? What do you think the main reason kids begin using drugs? Well, there's so many, but an alarming 73% list stress as number one, and peer pressure is number two. By high school, most of the decisions have been made. By 16, exposure to their drugs and their attitudes towards their family is very firm. So what can parents do to protect their children from the negative influences? Maybe it's an older sibling or a friend's older sibling, television, school, radio, internet, computers. Kids want to fit in, and they want to be part of the group at most any cost. In fact, there's no other time in a person's life when peer pressure is greater than during adolescence. We're going to talk about some important terminology that we'll be using throughout this seminar. The first one is denial, and it's a very big one. There are so many people, so many parents that have their head in the sand. Whole communities have their head in the sand when they don't want to look at a problem. If they don't acknowledge it, maybe they think they don't have to do anything about it. So that's not going to make the problem go away, though. Tolerance is another one. Tolerance is using more and more of a drug to get the same effect. Think of someone maybe that started smoking cigarettes. Maybe they smoked a couple when they went out, or maybe in the morning with their coffee. Pretty soon they were having 2, 3, 4. Then they went up to maybe a pack a day, 2 packs a day, 3 packs a day. The body needed that drug. Same works with every drug. Your body builds up a tolerance, whether it's alcohol, crack, cocaine, whatever. They all have a tolerance that builds up. Next one is dependency. That's when the body depends on the drug. That's what brings the tolerance up. The body is craving the drug, so they depend on it. And it could be as dependency. Think of maybe something that you depend on. Maybe it's your morning coffee. Maybe it's chocolate you're craving. But on drugs, the body depends on having it to get rid of that feeling or crash that we'll talk about later. Another one is addiction. Drug abuse, if not treated, may lead to addiction. Addiction is the chronic relapsing brain disease expressed in the form of compulsive behaviors. The initial decision to use drugs is voluntary, and addiction compels a person to become obsessed with obtaining and abusing the drugs, despite the adverse health and life consequences. Some of the signs of use or abuse, again, denial, that's the big one. Unable to speak intelligibly. Their speech changes. They get hostile, very angry, deceitful. Maybe they don't want you to see what they have on the internet. Maybe they don't want you to hear them on the cell phone. Maybe they don't want you to know all their friends or where they're going. They blame others. Maybe if you smell something on them unusual, maybe chemicals or smoke, they always blame somebody else. Oh, it was my friends. I was just holding it for them. They're very unpredictable, break promises, many problems. They lose control, maybe have blackouts, don't remember where they were, who they were with. Change in relationships. Maybe they're hanging around with kids that you never saw around before, and maybe they just don't dress like your child does, and it seems like they're changing, your child's changing their style of dress. Could be mood changes, very emotional stability. So we're going to talk about some of the drug categories now. First one is stimulants. Stimulates the heart, the body, makes you wide awake, energetic, could be very high. Another one, just the opposite, depressants. Depress the body, slows the body down. Inhalants is another one. Inhalants are used by younger children, mostly, and we'll talk more about all of these categories. Hallucinogens, those are the mind-altering drugs, and narcotics, the pain drugs. Some of the drugs, and I will talk about gateway drugs, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and inhalants are gateway drugs. They open the gate for people to get onto the harder drugs because the body gets to tolerate those drugs, and depending on those, and they don't get a big enough high or high enough high, so it leads to other drugs. People in inpatient treatment that are on the harder illegal drugs, chances are they are also using one of the gateway drugs. Let's talk about stimulant drugs first. You can see that 5-hour energy drink. I just read an article in the paper that there was a gal that overdosed and died. She had taken 5-hour energy drinks within a short period of time. Now you think it says 5 hour, that's 25 hours of energy of the drugs, the stimulant that was in that. And people mix the energy drinks with alcohol. Now alcohol is a depressant. And they're putting a stimulant in. So it delays the reaction of the body, that people don't really realize that they're under the influence of the alcohol because they have the stimulant, and there's a lot of them on the market today. You see them advertised all the time. You see them in gas stations and convenience stores. Right? Other stimulant drugs, nicotine. That's kind of a fooler because sometimes people think, oh, I have to have a cigarette to relax. Nicotine is a stimulant, and it makes the heart beat faster. And people are, the reason they think that they're relaxing is because it stops the craving for it, for the nicotine and the fix that they need from the nicotine. Nicotine is the addictive drug in cigarettes, in tobacco products. Cocaine, crack, amphetamines, methamphetamines, MDMA or ecstasy. Those are all stimulant drugs. Okay, here's tobacco. It's the most abused drug in our society. It increases the heart rate, and the entry level is at a very young age. Very highly addictive and quite a major health issue. So many different things are in the body are affected by its use. So, what's in cigarettes and why is it so bad? Okay, look at some of these substances. Would you want to put some of these in your body? How about formaldehyde? Okay, embalming fluid, that's in, they're all in cigarettes. Doesn't sound very appetizing, does it? But people don't stop and think when they're addicted to tobacco products. And it is the only addictive substance in cigarettes is the nicotine. Here's some facts about cocaine and crack. These are some of the nicknames. Different areas of the nation have different nicknames for different drugs. So different areas, you don't know what it might be called in your particular community, but these are pretty common. It promises euphoria, affects the neurotransmitters in the brain. It's often snorted or often laced with other things. You never know what's in it. You never know what's pure. It could have rat poison or kitchen cleanser. They lace other things to stretch the product so they can sell more, make more. Could be smoked, could be injected. Amphetamines and methamphetamines. Amphetamines speeds the brain and the body. Abuse prescription drugs, Dexedrine, Benzedrine, Ritalin. We'll talk about these a little later too. Those are some of the street names for amphetamines. Methamphetamines, very addictive also. Smoked, snorted, ingested, injected. Very high feeling, and most drugs are followed by a deep crash. Now, a crash could be pretty devastating. A crash could lead to death, but a crash might be headaches, stomach aches, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach cramps on some of the illegal drugs. Think about, I could relate maybe if someone was getting very jittery because they didn't have their cigarettes. Okay, their body's craving it. That could be called a crash. People that have caffeine every day, hot chocolate every day, whatever, they need that caffeine in the coffee. If they stopped, their crash might be a headache because the body needs that caffeine. Some of the street names: meth, crank, crystal, ice. in the spring, when the rural areas have the anhydrous ammonia tanks, or maybe in the fall, they might find more prevalence of having meth labs, mobile meth labs, maybe in cars, or they might find paraphernalia out in ditches, or sometimes motels have people that rent the rooms for a meth lab. There's always a strange odor. They say it's like cat urine, so it's a unique smell. Ecstasy, called the hug drug. They talk about those hug drugs and designer drugs. It raves. It heightens all the senses in the body. Look at all the different kinds of and colors of tablets. There could be smiley faces, cartoon characters, bunnies, whatever. But they're very colorful. Cartoons, clovers. When people are high on ecstasy, like you said, it heightens their visual. Parents have a hard time finding it when they wear off. But some of the items that you would look for would be the candy necklaces, surgical masks. When they put Vicks inside the surgical mask, it heightens the smell. When they have the glow sticks, it heightens their sight and their vision. They like loud music. They use pacifiers because they tend to clench their teeth, and people that use that wear off the enamel on their teeth. So if they keep a pacifier in their mouth, it kind of helps from that. Some of the signs from stimulant drug use: wide, dilated eyes, very hyperactive, rapid speech, wired appearance, very nervous, non-reactive to light, skin tones very flushed, very warm to the touch, sweating. Some of the effects: very unpredictable, very unstable, fatigue, exhaustion, irritable, could be weight loss. Some of the extreme dangers could be death, seizures, heart attack, stroke, depression, paranoia. Most drugs, some of the effects is paranoia, because the illegal drug, they're afraid somebody's going to find out or know what their drug is, or that they are even on something. Again, increased tolerance and very physically addictive. Some of the depressant drugs: alcohol slows the body, marijuana, tranquilizers, GHB, rohypnol, ketamine. That picture on the bottom, that's ketamine. Maybe in some of the communities, the veterinarians are subject to break-ins and theft, because ketamine is what they actually use to put the animals to sleep, to tranquilize them. So it affects the central nervous system, causing the brain and the body to slow down. What we do to get data on what to make our strategic plans and our goals in our communities, in our schools, and our coalitions, we have to do surveys to obtain the data. Here in Illinois, we have the Illinois Youth Survey, and it's a free survey given to kids in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades, and it's given every other year, so we can track the same kids through school. And it's also a good tool to kind of compare that with the national statistics. And what you have on your screen is the Monitoring the Future, the National Survey for 2010. And they'll be doing it again in 2012, as will our local students. But this past month usage, and the results are very, very accurate. They have what they call a fudge factor, and they ask the same question in different ways. So if they're not consistent in their answers, they automatically disregard that survey. But look what we see with alcohol for the past month that they reported. 8th grade, 14.9%. Look at the jump to 10th grade. Now, why do you suppose there's such a jump in 10th grade? Well, think of the mobility of kids by the time they're in their 10th grade. Driver's license, cars, friends with cars, jobs, money. 12th grade, 43.5% nationally. Now, locally, what we've found, it's even higher than that. It's over 50%. Pretty alarming, isn't it? That when you think that over 50%, over half of the 12th graders are using alcohol in the past month. Cigarettes, look at how that goes up by the time they're in 12th grade. Marijuana, pretty comparable to cigarettes. The most important findings from the 2010 survey, though, was the marijuana use. It's been rising among teens for the past 2 years, and it continues to rise in 2010 in all 3 grades. Nearly 1 in 16 high school seniors today is a current daily marijuana user. Here are some of the facts. It's a depressant. It's the most widely used illicit drug in the United States. The second most abused drug by youth under 21. Smoking 1 joint is like smoking 5 cigarettes. There are so many more chemicals in marijuana, and it is so much more potent today than it was in the 70s, 7 to 10 times more potent. You'll hear adults say, well, I smoked it when I was in high school or college and it didn't bother me. I turned out fine. But they don't really know now what it might be laced with and how much more dangerous it is. And again, it's considered the gateway to cocaine use. It affects the hippocampus region of the brain, which produces memory. They have short-term memory loss, and it affects the long-term also. Very addictive. Again, the tolerance builds up with it, and the brain has a hard time processing new information into the long-term memory. It's much more prevalent than any other illicit drug again. Sometimes I stress some of these points because it's very important. Loss of short-term memory distorts sight, sounds, tastes, and feelings. People can't concentrate. Impaired motor skills. Motor skills are used for so many things. Driving, anything electronic, when people are on the job and they can't do a good job, they could be suspected marijuana users. Can damage the reproductive and immune system. People get sick more often, have more colds, flus, increased risk for cancer. Some of the signs: redden in the white eyes, droopy eyelids, dazed, coated tongue. They giggle and laugh at inappropriate things. Different drug paraphernalia, and I'll show you some pictures of drug paraphernalia in just a little bit. Mood swings, nervous, fearful, paranoid again, panicked. Depth perception. Again, you certainly need your depth perception if you're driving a car or another vehicle. Strange odor, strong, musty, sweet smell. It's like burning leaves in the fall, but it's very sweet and musty. Okay, GHB and Rohypnol. They're drugs that affect the central nervous system, depressants. They're labeled the date rape drugs, and it's very prevalent in raves. It has a sedative effect within 10 to 20 minutes. That's really quick. Clear, odorless, tasteless, very easily soluble. Just 1 drop on in somebody's maybe on a cigarette or marijuana would affect them. They're likely to suffer amnesia while under the influence. Now we're going to talk about inhalants. Inhalants are a poison. Inhalants are mainly used by younger children, maybe 4th, 5th grade, they might start using it. They're all things that you have in your home. Here's some of them. Aerosol cans. Any aerosol can. I don't care if it's room freshener, underarm deodorant, paint, spray paint. In some communities, they ban the sales of spray paint to kids. In some communities, they even put the hairspray up so people aren't buying it because it's inexpensive. Nitrous oxide, butane. It's these products everyone has in their home. It could be in the kitchen, under the sink. It could be in the bathroom. Could be in the garage. Could be the basement. But kids, you know, when kids are small and they spin themselves around and around, they get dizzy, they fall down. Well, they get a little bit older and they think, I heard you get this little dizzy spell if you do some inhaling. So they might try that. My daughter worked in a local chain grocery store, and she went on break one day. She went out to the back door and she looked in the trash can, and here was quite a few cans, empty cans of whipped cream. She thought, what in the world are all these cans, empty cans in here for? She thought, I'm going to keep an eye on it. And of course, knowing what field that I'm in, she was aware of inhalants, and she kept an eye on them, and she caught a bunch of the stockers that were inhaling it. Needless to say, they lost their job, but you don't think about things until you see several empty cans of the same thing. Markers, those permanent markers, hairspray, they're easy to conceal. People think they're harmless, but very accessible and cheap. Children are very vulnerable, and so many of those household products, they can become lethal. 1 out of 10 youth have tried inhaling. Some of the nicknames, they call them huffing, bagging. They might take gasoline on a rag and put it in a bag and huff that and sniff that, referred to as America's hidden drug problem. What are some of the signs? A chemical breath, chemical odor on the clothing. Maybe they're slurring their speech, disoriented, red or runny eyes or nose, spots or sores around the mouth or nose, especially if they're inhaling paint. And I want to emphasize that it's not the product in these aerosol cans. It's the propellant that it takes to get the product out of the can. If you've ever used spray paint, and on the directions it says when you're done using it, turn the can upside down and give it a spray to clear the nozzle of the paint. Well, what's coming out is the propellant. And people know that, and again, this is very addictive too. Kids might get headaches, nausea, loss of appetite, signs of the paint or markers on the face. They get dazed or dizzy or drunk. Again, headaches, irritable, restless. Some of the other signs, sometimes they might put like that whiteout under their nails and then sniff that. Smelling the sleeves of clothing that they maybe had sprayed. Hiding rags, clothes, empty containers, chemical-soaked rags, bags, or socks. Missing household items. Maybe every time you buy a certain product in a can, the computer cleaners, that's very lethal too. Some of the effects, they call it sudden sniffing death, SSD. Hearing, limb spasms, problems with the bone marrow, heart, liver, kidney damage, and severe or permanent brain damage. So parents should be informed. So now we're going to talk about hallucinogens like LSD, acid, or PCP, which is angel dust, and shrooms. Here's some of the different examples. Back in the 70s, they had a lot of scares on the hallucinogens, and there's a reason that we're going to talk about them today too. Very mind-altering, mood-altering. Just one drop on a stamp, and if kids would lick the stamp, they would have that high or the effects of it. Anxious, panicky, hyperventilating, dilated pupils, distorts reality, time, and space. Effects of them on the user? Very bizarre response to stimuli around them. They over-exaggerate movements. They can have flashbacks years after they have had that drug in the system. The actions won't match the environment. The heart starts pumping faster. Body and blood pressure increases. They get very panicky, confused, and abnormally suspicious. All right, we're going to talk about narcotics. Here's examples: morphine, codeine, Darvon, Demerol, Vicodin, OxyContin. Heroin is the big one. There was a significant increase in heroin use using needles among 12th graders in the 2010 Monitoring the Future. What are some of the signs of narcotic use? Unresponsive to light change. Look at the pinpointed pupils now, whereas before we talked about dilated pupils. Rubbing the face and scratching. Deepening of voice. Slow, sedated, dreamy state. Stumbling. Nods off. Pupils will pulse when they're coming down from narcotics. So, what are we going to watch for? Some of the things: people get very withdrawn, very depressed, could commit suicide, very secretive. They don't care about their appearance. When people are on heroin, that's all they think about is the drug, their addiction, how are they going to pay for it, or if they're going to steal to get it. Hostile, uncooperative, breaks the rules. They don't care about family, friends, work, school, grades. Things that they were most interested in, hobbies, they don't care anything about anymore. They have a hard time sleeping. Eating patterns change. Maybe household money is missing. Change in routine. Some of the paraphernalia. This paraphernalia could be used for many things: crack, cocaine, heroin, very fancy ones: glass vials, bongs, tiny vases, pipes, rolling papers, that would be for your marijuana, incense, and roach clips. Those are little, when they get down to the very end, they want to make sure they get it all, so they have a little clip, could be as simple as a paper clip. Okay, bottles, containers, that small pill-sized bottles or containers. Sometimes, if you've ever been into a gas station, they have very unusual things on the counter sometimes. Like we talked about that 5-hour energy drink. Well, sometimes you see these little glass vials with a little artificial flower in them. Well, those aren't intended for someone to buy their sweetheart. They don't want the flower in it. They want to put their drugs in there so they can cook them, like the person in the picture is doing with that light bulb. And then they can, it'll become a liquid when they can inject it. So plastic bags, foil, mouth fresheners to kind of cover up what they're using. We talked about the pacifiers, glow sticks, and mentholated rub. Razor blades to cut the crack, to snort it, or smoke it, or ingest it. Many, many more. Prescription drug abuse is something that I want to be sure that you know about. Farming parties, PHARM, farming parties. Bowling, they take all the pills that they can get from cabinets, and if you go into, just think about your own home or your parents' home or your grandparents' home. And when people, maybe they go to the hospital and they get some kind of a pain pill or whatever, and they don't finish taking them, so maybe they're in the back of the medicine cabinet. When was the last time you cleaned out your medicine cabinet or your drawers with your prescriptions in and all the outdated ones? Here locally, in a few of our communities, we have what we call a P2D2. It's a disposable prescription drug campaign. And the government comes and takes them all and incinerates them and disposes of them. But it gets them out of the hands of youth that might be mixing them. They put them in a bowl, and then they just take a handful. They could be stimulants, they could be depressants, they could be narcotics. It doesn't matter. But they think that because it's a prescription drug, that it can't be that bad. Well, they are very bad, and there's very severe consequences, even death, from farming parties. What else is new in drugs? Well, the perpetual introduction of new drugs, or new forms, or new modes of administering them. Of the older ones is crack, crystal meth, and non-injected heroin. Helps keep this nation's drug problem alive. The forces of containment are always playing catch-up with the forces of encouragement and exploitation with legal highs. The whole nation is having problems with bath salts right now, herbal incense, plant food, K2. These are all illegal drug look-alike and have the same effect. And it's very alarming. Right now, they are illegal. The bath salts are illegal. There are at least 28 states that have banned the bath salts, and that's of the last report I had was in July of 2011, and they're typically sold from anywhere from $25 to $80 for a gram. And they might have names like Aura, Ivory Wave, Local Motion, Vanilla Sky. And the cases are jarring, and they're similar to those involving PCP like there was in the 70s. And though they come in powder and crystal form like traditional bath salts, hence their name, they differ in one crucial way. They're used as recreational drugs. And people typically snort, inject, or smoke them. If you take the worst attributes of meth, coke, PCP, LSD, and ecstasy and put them together, that's what we're seeing sometimes. And the experts say that bans can be thwarted by chemists who need change only one molecule in the salts to make them legal again once they put a ban on them. So it's quite an epidemic. And there have been quite a few overdoses and even deaths. Some communities, I know here in Illinois, they tried to make legislature to ban them. It passed the Senate, but it didn't pass the House yet. And so what some of the communities are trying to do is do local bans on them. If we can get our local legislators to put a ban on them, it's the only way we can do something to stop this epidemic, because we know that the scientists are always making new drugs. It's just like the designer drugs. If everyone had the same designer purse or same designer shoes, or if Nike only made one style of shoe, everyone would have it, and they would go out of business. But the drug dealers keep making new drugs, different highs. So one thing I want you to note, that these synthetic drugs containing MDPV, and you can see it's a long name, but if that is on the package, you know that that is the drug that's so dangerous. And they call it fake drugs, and they are legal. They are selling them in your local tobacco shops, your local gas stations, head shops they call them. And like the head shops, they might sell a lot of that drug paraphernalia even though they're not selling the cocaine or the heroin. But these stores are selling this to our kids, and they're having very, very terrible problems with them. So like we talked about the prescription drugs, I want to mention that once more because that's a drug, like another gateway drug almost, because the teens are misusing and abusing so many different types of prescription drugs, from stimulants to painkillers to antidepressants and anti-seizure drugs. It can be difficult to know what signs to watch for. Each drug has a different effect, and mixing these, which some teens do at those farming and bowling parties, it's very dangerous and can lead to permanent organ damage and even death. And they aren't just swallowing them. They're abusing them by combining them with alcohol or crushing them and snorting them to get a quicker, more intense high. So I want you to know the signs that might point to prescription drug abuse and to the abuse of these legal drugs. Just be observant and intervene early if you think your child or student or someone you know may have a problem with the prescription drugs or other substances. So teens that who consistently learn about the risks of prescription drugs at home are half as likely as their peers to try or use them in other drugs. Sometimes when we do parenting classes, parents will ask, well, do you think that's right that we should talk to them about it? Because maybe they'll know about it and then maybe they'll try it. But no, we know talking works and education works. And rates of tobacco and alcohol and illicit drug abuse by teens, they've declined dramatically in the last decade, due in large part to the collective efforts of anti-drug and prevention communities. And history has shown that as the perception of the risk goes up, teens' willingness to abuse or misuse substances goes down. So educating them about the true dangers of prescription drug abuse in an interactive, compelling way is very critical. So please be aware of some of these things that are on the market that our kids are subjected to. So if you suspect there's a problem, you're probably right. So acknowledge it. Be specific. Ask specific, open-ended questions. Try to remain calm and connect with your child. Never try to argue or talk with someone when they're under the influence, whether it's alcohol or any of these other drugs. Be prepared. That's what you're doing now. And I'm really glad to know that you're wanting more information. Practice what you say. Seek help from professionals. Look into your local community to substance abuse, mental health professionals, family, schools, support groups, churches, your law enforcement. They stay on top of it. So act now. You're not alone, and you can make a difference. Timing is so important. The first year of middle school is critical. Be extra vigilant by monitoring your youth. Adult supervised after-school activities is a key. They say between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock are the most critical times in a child's life. Get to know their parents and their friends. If they're going to their friend's house, talk to their parent. Find out what their parents' views are. Do they think that it's okay to let the kids drink in their home and take away their keys? And we know what that can lead to. If maybe unwanted sex, maybe raising their tolerance for alcohol, maybe other accidents, arguments, fights. Set limits and enforce them. You can't shield your child from learning about the existence of drugs, but you can help your child learn how to turn them down. Teach them it's okay to say no to their friends if they're pressured. Okay, there's conversation starters. I always call them teachable moments. Keep communications open. Here's some other tips. Support your youth. Help them develop refusal skills. Set a no tolerance rule. Teachable moments. Use blocks of time such as after dinner to talk about drugs, why they're harmful. Point out alcohol, tobacco, drug-related situations in your neighborhood. How about news stories? Watch TV with the kids and ask them what they think about it. Stories on the internet. How about some of these games that they play? There's not only violence, but there's drug usage in them. Build a strong bond with your child. Stay involved in their life. Set clear limits and enforce discipline. Kids want and need discipline. I heard a story the other day about a parent that said, and they went to the law enforcement because they didn't know what, they threw up their hands, didn't know what they were going to do with their child. And they were told, you have a legal right and a legal responsibility to put food on the table, a roof over the head, and clothing. You don't have a right or a responsibility to have a door to their bedroom and a computer and a cell phone and some of the other conveniences that the kids have today. And the parent took the door off the room, took it down to the police station, and the local law enforcement officer took it. And he said, when your behavior improves, maybe you will earn the right to have a door on your room. So I thought that was a pretty unusual situation, but that was one of the consequences. But we have to stick behind what we think might work. So don't assume alcohol, tobacco, and illegal drugs are the only threat. There's so many other things out there. Talk early and talk often about drugs, especially the consequences of using them. Grandparents are great tools. Aunts, uncles, look for help. Talk about it. The more you talk about it, the more you'll learn. Look on the internet. There's so many resources. You are the #1 reason a youth will refuse alcohol or other drugs. And we find that in the results of our survey all the time. Children who learn about the risks of using drugs are 50% likely to try them. That's an alarming rate. So you're doing the right thing when you learn about it and you teach them about it. Research indicates that parents who stay involved in their child's life give them a better chance at staying drug-free. Parents plus questions equal the anti-drug. So you need to stay informed. These are some results we got from the surveys too. 28% of parents say their kids' friends smoke marijuana. That's their perceptions. Interesting. 67% of teens say their friends smoke marijuana. 38% of parents say marijuana is very easy for their teen to get, but 55% of teens say the drug is easy to get. Okay? 14% of parents perceive that their child has tried marijuana, but 41% of teens say they've tried the drug. Quite a difference, isn't there? So where can you get help? Outside of some of the others that I've talked about, there are very, very good sites, and you should check them out. They might be interesting for you. They might be interesting for your kids, but check them out yourself. There's some that are so interesting for kids to learn on with interactive games for kids. And there's a lot of self-help quizzes and tests for parents on knowledge and where they think their own usage might come into a play here. So I'll leave that up for a little while, and then I can go back to it if anybody needs to have more. And maybe you can try it out and see what you might find that's very helpful. And print them off so you can have them handy. They even give you conversation starters and ways to introduce different drugs to your kids. Okay, I hope you got some of those down because I think they're very good. I have one question here. Someone asked, if the new synthetic drug abuse is becoming such an epidemic, what can we do to stop more overdose and deaths? Well, contact your state legislators, voice your concern, and contact your local government officials to try to get a city and county law to ban the sale in your community. You can do it locally. We can also encourage other parents to be informed and take action. So local ordinances can rule now, and we want to get our teens involved. And once we get the ordinance passed, we want our teens to be visible with signs to ban those drugs in front of some of these head shops and smoke shops. We want them to be informed also. Another one, how can we know if our kids are on the drugs, and are there testing kits? Yes, there are. Your big box stores, they have drug testing kits, and they're only about $40, and they're very accurate, and they detect most of the popular illegal drugs, but the new designer drugs, they're not included because they're so new, and they just can't keep up with them. Your local doctor or hospital can order one. They can order specific tests, like if you thought your child was on K2 or bath salts, but the cost would be considerably higher. I think I heard recently it might have been up to maybe between $100 and $200 for that specific test. So if you have any other questions, you can email us, and we can answer your questions. Here's information that about our organization, Health Directions. So you can call that number or you can email us. And I thank you again for attending our webinar today. Thank you.